and the following day, Mayor Espinosa did surrender to PMP Chief Ronald Bato de la Rosa. In a public speech on the 5th of August 2016, Mr. Duterte stated the following in reference to Mayor Espinosa's surrender, and this can be found at tab 129.
Problema niya ay yung mayor ng Albuera. Mabuti, nakaabot siya doon kay Bato na pinahanap ko, shot on sight, parang aso. Eh, ang tingin ko talaga sa inyo, kayo, parang aso.
And on around the 5th of November 2016, a few months after Mr. Duterte had him tracked down like a dog, Rolando Espinosa was murdered while in detention in Leyte Provincial Jail, together with another man, Raul Yap. According to the PMP's official narrative of this incident, there was a shootout between Espinosa and Yap and officers who attempted to serve search warrants on them while in prison. By contrast, the evidence demonstrates, as set out in paragraphs 107 to 110 of our brief, that these men were murdered in their prison cells in a coordinated operation involving various state agents. CCTV was disabled, guns were planted in their cells, rewards were paid. And as we see on the slide now on our screens, tab 48 of our list of materials, both Mr. Espinosa and Mr. Yap were included in the PRRD list, amongst other individuals whose names have been blurred by the prosecution. Rolando Espinosa in the upper row is recorded as a mayor and alleged to be a drug lord, indicated as level 4. And Raul Yap in the lower row is also alleged to be a drug lord, listed as level 3. The arrest of both men is noted, and this is shown on the right side. Then separately, it is noted that they were neutralized. And in a further indication that to neutralize meant to kill, as we see here, it is only on the date of their death, the 5th of November 2016, that they were noted as neutralized. Additionally, in our RD spreadsheet labeled high-value targets, now visible on our screens, there is a photo of Mayor Espinosa. He's the person in the yellow T-shirt in the second row on the far right side. As you can see from the enlarged photo, he's been crossed out in red, which, as a witness confirmed, indicates that he had been killed. And if your honours look closely at this list, you'll see it appears to be the same list that Mr. Duterte held during a speech on the 2nd of February 2017. And for reference, these are tabs 48 and 111. And your honours, following these murders, Mr. Duterte continued his public threats. For example, on the 9th of February 2017, he stated publicly that mayors involved in illegal drugs should resign or face death. We'll play an extract of this speech, which is at tab 132 now.
Tatawagin ko yung mga mayors, ilak ko, no, kami-kami lang. Sabihin ko talaga sa kanila. Ayun, ganun kakapal yung pinakita ko sa inyo. Hanapin mo yung pangalan mo dyan, mayor. Tangina, pag nandyan yung pangalan mo, may problema. Talagang papatayin kita.
Mr. Duterte's message to the mayors could not be clearer. If your name is in my list, then I'll kill you. And in case anyone watching this speech has any doubt about his intentions, Mr. Duterte goes on to comment on extrajudicial killings. And as he does so, your honours will note the nonchalant, casual manner in which he draws his finger across his throat. Let's play the video.
Wala akong ako talaga ang wala akong maipagyabang. Kaya ginadaan ko na lang sa extrajudicial killing.
And in this opulent, gilded presentation room, the officials laugh along with their president while he boasts about his skills in extrajudicial killing. And outside, on the streets of the Philippines, the bodies pile up. The evidence from one data set shows that as at the date of this speech, 9th of January 2017, almost 1,500 people had been killed in Mr. Duterte's so-called war on drugs, and that's paragraph 73 of our brief. A few months later, in an April 2017 speech, which I won't play, but is a tab 134.2, Mr. Duterte called the deceased Espinosa a, quote, son of a bitch, and after citing multiple allegations of murders by the police, he said he would pardon and reinstate any convicted police officer with a, quote, promotion to ranks higher, end quote. Your Honours, I move now to the second part of my presentation, the murders and attempted murders committed during the barangay clearance operations. And these operations were covered by the first barrel of Project Tokang, which we looked at earlier. We'll briefly return to this document, CMC 2016, and the overview of the two barrels. As the slide on our screen shows, the stated aim of Project Tokang, just focusing on the first sentence, was, quote, accelerating the drive against illegal drugs in affected barangays, end quote. And in practice, Your Honours, this meant murdering some of the most vulnerable members of Filipino society. As witnesses stated, the poor were often targeted because they were the ones least likely to file complaints against the police. To quote one witness on our next slide, he stated, "It was said that the ones that we had to do the Tokang operation on had to be poor. Those who do not have the means to file a complaint or to complain." And similarly, another witness stated the following: "Based on what we've seen here in the Philippines, the people that were killed or could be killed were the poor, people with no means, simple people who were not able to file charges against them." Your Honours, Project Tokang operations were implemented across the Philippines in a number of ways, as set out in paragraph 75 of our brief. And these operations frequently followed the same modus operandi, as we also set out in paragraphs 33 and 114 of our brief, which was as follows. A target was identified, often through the use of lists, such as barangay lists or police station watch lists. The target was then murdered in a police operation. Weapons, drugs, and money, or a combination thereof, were then planted at the crime scene. And then the police reports were repeatedly falsified to legitimate the operations as acts of self-defense. And in this context, as witnesses explain, the police often used the term nanlaban, which translates to fighting back, to describe incidents in which they supposedly shot a victim in self-defense. And these reports were often almost identical. In essence, copy-paste reports in which victims were frequently blamed for their own deaths. And finally, unofficial rewards were paid. Your Honours, I'll briefly focus on a few of the Count 3 incidents to illustrate this pattern. On the day of his inauguration, the 30th of June 2016, then President Duterte held a speech in Tondo, Manila, and he directly addressed the public present, including, as we will see, women and children. For reference, this is tab 127. Let's please play the clip.
Ako po'y galit. Pati yung mga pulis dito sa Maynila, nakasabit sa droga. Ako po'y nakikiusap, wag ho kayong pumasok dyan kasi papatayin ko talaga kayo.
As we see, Mr. Duterte's message was clear. Stay away from drugs, or I will kill you. And the killing in Tondo began almost immediately following this speech, as we set out in our brief, paragraphs 100 to 101. I'll focus now on, and Tondo is visible on our screens. I'll focus now on incident 23, which also took place in Tondo, on or about the night of the 4th to the 5th of October 2016. As your honours are aware, the alleged victim of this incident 23 was Benjamin Vizda. And we'll shortly see a video which shows Mr. Vizda just before midnight in a vest, in handcuffs, forced onto a motorbike between two police officers and driven away. And this is tab 76, and we'll play the video now. And we see now Mr. Vizda being forced onto the motorbike between the two police officers. And as he's been driven away, we see women and children chasing after him, no doubt terrified about what would happen next. And around 20 minutes later, Your Honours, Mr. Vizda was dead, shot multiple times in the head by police officers. A witness described the scene, and Your Honours, the next slide will be a graphic image. And for reference, this is tab 77. The witness stated, quote, "The victim was lying on the street in handcuffs and was dead. He'd been shot in the head 7 or 8 times," end quote. The official account of this incident was recorded in a police report known as a Spot Report, dated the 5th of October 2016. This is tab 65. And this report, an extract of which is on the screen, stated that Mr. Vizda was killed by the police in self-defense after he snatched the firearm of a police officer while he was on a motorbike, while wearing handcuffs, and he shot at the police but missed. Your Honours, as demonstrated by the evidence in paragraph 126 of our brief, this narrative is false. Benjamin Vizda did not fight back. He was murdered. Your Honours, Project Tokang was also carried out through one-time, big-time, or OTBT operations. And these were large-scale, high-intensity police operations that often resulted in multiple murders. And one such operation took place in Bulacan, shown on our screens, between the 15th and the 16th of August 2017. In August 2017, the police made a press release regarding their recent operations, which noted that 32 people were killed by the police in simultaneous one-time, big-time operations from the 15th to the 16th of August 2017. This press release, which can be found at tab 108, is visible on our screens. In the headline, we read, quote, 32 killed, 107 arrested, as firearms, grenades, and numerous illegal drugs were seized in Bulacan, PMP, simultaneous big-time operations. And focusing, Your Honours, on the paragraph at the bottom of the screen, we see that the deaths of these 32 people were recorded as, quote, significant results, end quote, of the, quote, intensified campaign against illegal drugs, otherwise known as Project Double Barrel Reloaded, end quote. And this was essentially a reinvigorated version of Project Double Barrel, as set out in our brief footnote 37. And the press release goes on to name the 32 victims of this operation, which included 3 victims who are victims of charged incidents 28 and 29 in this case, who were murdered consistent with the pattern of the other incidents in count 3, as set out in paragraphs 131 to 132 of our brief. Your Honours, 32 individuals killed by the police in Bulacan in a 24-hour period. You would imagine this would be a major national incident. So how did Mr. Duterte react to this shocking news? Let's hear what he said, and for reference, this is tab 147.
Yung namatay daw kanina sa Bulacan 32 in a massive raid. Ganda yun. Makapatay lang tayo ng mga another 32 every day, then maybe we can reduce the what ails this country.
So that was the President's message in response to the death of 32 Filipinos in a single day. He essentially said to the police, well done, keep going, let's kill another 32 every day. And, Your Honours, in this context, as you would expect, the killings went on and on. This phase of one-time, big-time operations continued until around the 18th of August 2017, resulting in many more deaths. As one witness stated, quote, "It was hunting season, a killing spree," end quote. And that's at tab 77. And on the evening of the 16th of August, in the midst of this killing spree, perhaps at the same time as Mr. Duterte's speech in Bulacan, a 17-year-old child named Kian de los Santos was murdered in Caloocan, the location of which is marked on our screens. And this is charged incident 30. As usual, the police claimed that Kian de los Santos shot at them and they were forced to shoot him dead in self-defense. Another victim blamed for his death. As set out in our brief, paragraph 133, this account is contradicted by CCTV footage showing police dragging the child across the ground, and other evidence shows that after pleading for his life, he was shot twice in the head. And the next slide is a graphic image, Your Honours, and that's tab 151. On our screens, we see the tragic image of the body of the 17-year-old child, Kian de los Santos. And as noted in our brief, paragraph 56, this brutal murder led to a massive public outcry across the Philippines. And in these circumstances, exceptionally, the direct perpetrators of these murders were prosecuted and they were imprisoned. And in the face of this public outcry, Mr. Duterte was forced to temporarily withdraw police from drug operations from the 10th of October to the 4th of December 2017. And this led to a reduction in the frequency of killings. In announcing this temporary withdrawal, Mr. Duterte sarcastically stated that he hoped that this would satisfy, quote, bleeding hearts and the media, end quote. And in this way, he publicly communicated that this was not a genuine effort to prevent crime, but rather a temporary attempt to placate public criticism. And less than 2 months later, Mr. Duterte decided to once again scale up operations. He ordered the PNP back into the campaign, and the killings once again intensified. And, Your Honours, regrettably, children continued to be the victims of these killings. Your Honours will recall that at the very start of his presidency, Mr. Duterte gave a speech in Tondo, and we saw a part of it earlier. This is tab 127 on our list of materials, and we'll watch another portion of that speech now.
Yung mga adik ho dyan, kayo na lang ho ang pumatay. Kung anak niya, ikaw ang pumatay. Kung anak niyang adik, kayo ang pumatay para hindi masyado masakit.
If it's someone's child, be the killer yourself. If someone's child is the addict, then you be the one to kill. Your Honours, it's worth pausing here, taking a step back and reflecting on what we are seeing and what we are hearing. This is the President of the Philippines, the Commander-in-Chief, the most powerful man in the Philippines. He's pointing directly at the crowd, and he is telling them to kill someone else's child. Kill them, not because they are an alleged drug lord, not even an alleged criminal, but simply because they may have an addiction to drugs. And this is an example, perhaps, of what the defense described yesterday as Mr. Duterte speaking, quote, openly from the heart, sincerely and truthfully, end quote. And that's transcript 4, page 37, lines 15 to 16. And during an earlier part of the same speech, Mr. Duterte also boasted that during his presidency, funeral homes would make a lot of money. Let's play that clip.
Sabihin ko sa inyo, itong mga panahon nitong mga araw na dadating, kung may punerarya ho kayo, kikita kayo ng husto. Tayo ko yung mga small time na punerarya dito, doon. At sigurado hindi kayo malugi. At pag humihina na ang negosyo ninyo, sabihin ko lang sa mga pulis, bilis-bilisan ninyo ng konti para kumita yung tao sa negosyo nila. Ayan, sinasabi ko na sa inyo. Hindi ako nagbibiro.
So again, here's the president assuring funeral homes that if their business declines, he will, quote, tell the police, hurry up a little so people can make money from their business, end quote. And he stressed very clearly he was, quote, not joking. And as my friend said yesterday, transcript 4, page 30, lines 18 to 19, quote, for President Roddy, his word was his word, and the people knew it, end quote. In this context, to conclude, I'll focus briefly on incidents 38 and 45. As your honours know, in the course of these incidents, which occurred during 2018, on two separate occasions, the police detained a child aged around 14 or 15 years old. On each occasion, the police wrapped the child's head in packing tape so no one could hear them scream, and then strangled the child to death with wire. It's difficult to imagine a more terrifying end to two lives that had barely even begun. And these murdered children were then sold to funeral homes, who profited from their bodies, as explained in paragraphs 142 and 150 of our brief. Your Honours, dead children, police ensuring that funeral homes made money. Mr. Duterte, indeed, was not joking. Thank you, Your Honours. This concludes my presentation. I now hand over to Ms. Croft.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur.
Judge Motors, thank you very much, Mr. Prosecutor, for your presentation. I think we are going to observe a break of 40 minutes up to 11:30 a.m. Thank you very much.
Okay, the ICC will conclude that hearing for temporarily 40 minutes. ICC Judge Moto concluded a 40-minute or 11:30 a.m. The Hague time for a break. Right now, uh, okay, the live feed is cut off. So we will go now to if we have the live feed at ANC. Let's get a live feed at ANC at this time. Again, we witnessed the confirmation of charges of against former President Rodrigo Duterte. The hearing, the 1/4, I think, the 1/4 of the hearing contains the evidence of the former president's killings of people and also children. We have may feed na tayo. Okay, we're somehow getting the feed right now. The coverage of ANC's coverage. Okay, we're now going to ANC's very. We're now going to okay. Nahihirapan. Now we're going to ANC's very own coverage.
Espinosa, kung nangangahulugan, according kay Prosecutor Edward Jeremy, napatay na or na-neutralize na kasi yun din ang nakalagay dun sa annotation dito sa PRRD list. Para samahan tayong himayin ang mga legal na implikasyon na ito, makakasama natin ang isang eksperto pagdating sa batas, si Attorney Lee Edson Yarcia. Siya ay senior lecturer sa UP College of Law. Magandang gabi po. Thank you for joining us tonight, Attorney.
Magandang gabi, Ms. Carmina.
Right. Sabay tayong nanood dito sa mga inilatag ni Prosecutor Edward Jeremy. Unang-una, ano ang napunan ninyo? Ano ang napansin nyo dun sa paglalahad niya ng kanyang presentasyon ngayong hapon po?
Sinusubaybayan pa rin natin kung ano yung ibibigay na pieces of evidence ng prosecution. Sa aking palagay at this point, maraming pieces of evidence na ilalatag, na ibibigay ang prosecution mula sa hearing yesterday hanggang sa hearing ngayon. It's a little too early to say kung masasatisfy nito ang sufficient evidence standard na kailangan para mag-proceed to trial. Pero definitely lumalakas ang basihan para i-confirm ang charges. At gusto nating marinig din sa mga susunod na araw ano ang magiging sagot ng defense para i-qualify or i-explain o kaya objektahan ang mga ebidensya na ibinibigay ng prosecution ngayon.
Attorney Yarcia, balikan lang natin yung sinabi ninyo. It's too early to say. Ang sabi ninyo, masyado pang maaga, no? Pero sinabi nyo din na lumalakas na itong argumento ng prosekusyon. Pero ano pa ba ang kailangan sa pananaw ninyo? Kung kayo ang nakaupo doon bilang miyembro ng Pretrial Chamber 1, ano ang hinahanap kaya nila sa puntong ito? Ano pa ang kulang na gusto nyong marinig mula sa prosekusyon?
Ang kailangang marinig ng ating pretrial chamber ay ang mga ebidensya na konkreto at tangible, concrete and tangible proof na una meron talagang crimes against humanity of murder na nagawa. So yung una, kailangang ma-establish ang mga acts, ang mga nangyaring alleged murders, no? Pangalawa, kailangang ma-establish yung contextual elements nito na hindi lamang nangyari ang mga krimen, kundi ito ay widespread at systematic. Ibig sabihin, malawakan ang naging perpetration of the crimes. At pag sinabi nating systematic, ang usual na hinihingi ng ating korte ay kailangang ma-establish na by state policy or by design. Ito ay ginawa talaga ng individual who's accused of the crimes against humanity. But number 3, kailangan ding ma-establish ng prosecution yung attribution na tinatawag. Ibig sabihin, kailangang mailatag ng prosecution na si Duterte ay may essential at pivotal role dito sa crimes against humanity. Nabanggit ko na lumalakas ang ebidensya kasi siya minomonitor natin mula pa kahapon. Very direct kasi yung evidence, no? Very tangible yung evidence na binibigay ng prosecution mula sa mga video clips, mga preliminary statements from the witnesses, mga official records, no? At ang basihan lamang ay sufficient evidence kasi so normally this would be acceptable. Naobserbahan din natin na ang defense, ine-explain nila, no, kina-qualify nila at ipinapaliwanag ang mga pieces of evidence na ibinigay. Halimbawa, kahapon yung mga speeches ni President Duterte, ang paliwanag ng defense ay they're usually taken out of context or cherry-picking ang mga statements, no? So, ito yung mga types of arguments na maririnig siguro natin sa mga susunod pang araw. Yeah.
Let's get into that right now, no? Kasi yun nga yung isang nabanggit ni Defense Counsel Nicholas Kaufman kahapon. Tila bagang nagpepresenta siya ng isa pang mukha ni Pangulong Duterte. At that this was his style of statesmanship. Hindi ba? Yun ang narinig natin kahapon. Pero tingin niyo ho ba na sa paglalatag ng argumento ngayon ni Prosecutor Edward Jeremy na tila nabasag or binasag niya din itong naratibo na gustong ipahayag ng Defense Counsel by saying that he's a very keen lawyer, na totoo na meron siyang sinasabi na kumbaga binabasag kung ano man ang order na ibinibigay niya, pero ito ay dahil lamang sa siya ay isang abogado na alam kung paano timbangin. Pero sa pananaw ng ICC, ano kaya ang bersyon ni Duterte, ang kanilang paniniwalaan? Kasi yun mismo ang inilatag ni Kaufman na siya naman sa tingin ninyo ba ay nabasag nitong si Prosecutor Jeremy? Go ahead po.
Definitely may direktang pagsagot, no, ang prosecution doon sa depensa na ibinigay ni Kaufman kahapon. Nariyan nga yung paliwanag na mukhang hindi lamang ito
Wishing there was something left to lose. This could be the day I die for you.
na may political reasons why these are being done, and it's part of the criminal intent na gustong i-establish ng prosecution. Importante din na may mga pagtatahi, no, ng pieces of evidence mula sa mga listahan ng high-value targets, yung mga lengguwahe na ginamit, halimbawa yung neutralize, no, tapos yung confirmation and celebration after. Sa aking palagay, ito ang burden, no, na kailangang i-establish ng prosecution. Maganda na marinig natin kung ano yung magiging response ng defense after this. Pero kung gagamitin natin ang evidentiary threshold na sufficient evidence, at this stage sa aking palagay ay natatahi ng prosecution ang mga elements, no, para mag-proceed ang kaso.
Tingin niyo ho ba ay nalatag ng maigi ni Prosecutor Edward Jeremy ang pagbasag niya dito sa sa argumento ni Nicholas Kaufman kahapon na ito ay style lamang ni Pangulo. Pero ngayong hapon ba ay nakita ninyo na naipresenta ng maigi ni Prosecutor Jeremy na ito ay kanyang strategiya para maiwasan ang pag-ako kalaunan? Short of saying that this was the former president's strategy to evade accountability, that for every single order, there is a counter statement. Go ahead, po.
At this point, I feel na it's a little speculative, no, to read into the statements made by former President Duterte as preemptive, no, of a possible defense for later. Actually, during the time 2016 to 20, during the war on drugs time, no, at least during the covered period, alam natin na may mga contradictions sa mga public statements, paiba-iba ang positions sometimes, no. I wouldn't say at this point we can read into that as really forward-looking, no, preempting possible defenses. But it's definitely a possible interpretation at siguro sa pagbasa ng pre-trial chamber, pwede nila itong timbangin, no, kung sapat pa ito para ma-establish ang criminal intent, no? Kasi if you are establishing the criminal mind, the possibility of evading arrest later on, setting up your defenses, that's part of what are considered as indications of a criminal mind. But at this point, I think medyo speculative pa para sabihin na it was really intentionally done to prevent further or to have defenses at a later time, such as what's happening now.
Kanina po nabanggit natin ang pagbanggit sa mga pangalang Paruhinog, Espinosa, binanggit din po ang pangalan ni Kian de los Santos. I want to ask you, Attorney Garcia, will this help the prosecution by including the case of Kian de los Santos? Ito ba ay babangga dun sa principle of complementarity na sinasabi naman ng kabilang panig na paano namang nagkaroon ng jurisdiksyon or paano namang hindi nagkaroon or hindi umaandar ang sistema ng hustisya sa bayan? Ito ngang kaso, yan ang sinasabi nila, di ba? Itong kaso ni Kian de los Santos ay naisampa, nagkaroon ng desisyon. So how can that prove that the justice system in the country was working? Go ahead, po.
It's definitely a good development, no, na nag-proceed ang case ni Kian de los Santos at na-convict nga yung mga involved na police. However, ang striking difference dito, yung mga respondents, yung mga accused dun sa Kian de los Santos case, hindi sila nag-hold ng highest position in the land, which is what was held by the former president. And by design, actually, the International Criminal Court is really having jurisdiction over the serious crimes, no? Another important difference is the case of Kian de los Santos is a single, no, an individual case. Ang pinapakinggan natin ngayon sa International Criminal Court ay mas malawakan, no, na crimes against humanity, no? So I would say this is a reflection of complementarity, that the local domestic processes can prosecute exact accountability based on its domestic rules, but at the same time, it does not preclude the ICC from exercising jurisdiction over the more serious crimes, katulad nito na crime against humanity. I think maganda na na-mention yung case ni Kian at yung iba pang mga biktima kasi what has to be presented and discussed in the confirmation charges hearing is really tangible proof, no, at dahil nga maraming pieces of evidence, no, na on official records because of, let's say, the case of Kian, ito ay makakatulong para mas maliwanagan ang confirmation charges hearing and probably later on during the trial process.
Balikan lang po natin yung sinabi nyo kanina na yung kailangan ma-establish yung attribution na may kinalaman nga itong si dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Nung ilinabas ni Prosecutor Jeremy yung memo number 16, 2016, kung saan inuutos ni dating PNP Chief Ronald Bato de la Rosa kumbaga, yung Oplan double barrel, di ba, ilinahad doon pagkatapos yung pag-neutralize nitong mga illegal drug personalities sa bansa. Ito ba ay tingin ninyong importanteng parte, no, na or ebidensya ng prosekusyon na magpapatunay na may kinalaman nga or talagang iniutos ng Pangulo ang ganitong sistematikong pagpatay sa ating mga kababayan, kasi itong memo na to ay pinirmahan ng kanyang PNP chief. Go ahead po.
Definitely, no, itong policy na sa high value target, Oplan Tokhang, no, ito ay isang piece of evidence that could establish state policy. Sa cases kasi ng ICC, kailangang ma-establish na by design, no, merong intention talaga to attack the civilian population on a systematic scale. Yung language din na ginagamit sa memorandum na in-issue, no, on Oplan Tokhang tsaka sa high value target, yun din kasi yung ginagamit publicly, no, halimbawa yung word na neutralize, tsaka yung context ng campaign against illegal drugs. Sa isang reasonable mind, no, mapapagdugtong yung state policy through the memorandum at yung mga nangyari, no, yung mga acts. Kaya at this stage, I think malakas na ebidensya din ito to establish the contextual elements for the crimes against humanity.
Merong ding inilatag, no, si Prosecutor Jeremy, na may isa silang witness na nagsabi na ang pagkaintindi nila sa neutralize ay pagpatay, in so many words, hindi ba? At sabi nyo nga kanina, yan ang normal na pag-isip kung ano ang ibig sabihin ng neutralize. Kung yan ang pananaw ninyo, paano kaya ito madedepensahan naman nila Attorney Kaufman? Given that the word neutralization is very central to the argument laid out, or to at least the presentation laid out before us by Prosecutor Jeremy just a few minutes ago, Attorney Garcia.
I expect the same argument raised before, no, kasi itong argument that neutralize is a word that does not necessarily mean extrajudicial killing or killing by itself, no. This has been responded to even by the police during the war on drugs. So we're expecting that the same line of argumentation will be raised, that this should be read in relation to the rules on the use of force, that the victims allegedly of the extrajudicial killings fought back, no, and neutralize did not mean automatically kill, but because of the context, no, of the incidents involved, that they fought back, that's what led to the eventual killing of the victim. So we're expecting the same line of argumentation probably by the defense, similar to what was argued before by the law enforcement during the height of the war on drugs.
I was talking to Attorney Duterte a while ago, and we were talking about the events that happened yesterday, no? Ang sinasabi niya na ang sa kanyang obserbasyon, yung opening statements ni Attorney Kaufman ay ang audience, ang target audience ay hindi mismo yung sa ICC, kundi yung mga taga-suporta ni Pangulong Duterte, at least for the opening statements, no, kahapon. Kung iisipin niyo po kung sino naman ang target audience ng prosecution ngayon sa paglalahad nila ng kanilang presentasyon ngayong araw, ito ba ay yung mga miyembro lamang, para sa mga miyembro lamang ng ICC Pretrial Chamber 1, or meron din silang gustong maabot na iba pang mga audience, no, sa labas mismo ng korte? At paano ito makakatulong, kung meron man?
Primarily, I think ang audience ng prosecution are really the judges, no? Dahil medyo methodical at very specific ang kanilang enumeration of the pieces of evidence, whether they're speeches, whether documentary, video clips, or other pieces of evidence. Ito kasi yung hinihingi talaga ng pre-trial chamber, no? Very concrete and tangible proof. So, by and large, I think the audience is really the pretrial chamber as a tribunal. But I do think that this whole process is also part of communicating with the victims. Kasi ang paglalatag ng kwento, the narrative, a pursuit for truth, and a discussion on what transpired during an important part of our history, that in itself is part of the concept of justice also. And so I think the mention of the names, these specific incidents, merong aspect of justice, no, the recognition that these happened. I think that they're the secondary audience as well for this presentation. I think pwede din nating sabihin na the rest of the international community is watching this process. No? It's an accountability process, and it signals that international law is working in as far as we are trying to prosecute important crimes that affect not just individuals or certain groups of people, but the international community as a whole. So these are the people watching, whether they're future world leaders or just other countries really advocating for the rule of law.
Attorney Garcia, do you think the prosecution was able to prove that through his speeches, the former president said something, the underlings followed, and this resulted in the thousands of killing? Dahil ba sinabi ng Pangulo, may sumunod, sinunod ang kanyang utos, at nagkaroon ng libo-libong pagpatay sa ating mga kababayan? Tingin nyo ba ay nailahad ito ng mahusay ng prosekusyon? At paano nila ito ipinakita?
Actually, the very interesting thing about the prosecution is mismong mga statements ni Duterte yung ginamit nila, no, ni former President Duterte. At whether that's the official hearing, no, the Quadcom hearing, official statements by the President, nato na yung pag-ako mismo ng mga effects, no, results of the war on drugs. At siguro importante din na masabi na it's not just really a direct order, no, the attribution and the role for President Duterte that was laid out by the prosecution is multifactorial yung presentation. Nariyan yung promise of cash incentives, promise of promotion, providing them with the materials, financial support that they need, and even the promise of impunity na kapag ginawa nila ang order or yung na-implement ang killings, no, hindi sila mapoprosecute under the law. So these were presented well, I think, by the prosecution by presenting all the video clips and the statements.
Pero babalik tayo, Attorney Garcia, dun sa kaso ni Kian de los Santos. Merong nasentensyahan na mga pulis. Will that backfire on the case of the prosecution? Go ahead.
I think that question goes into the willingness and ability of the state to prosecute, no? And that goes to jurisdiction as well, in a way, because the idea of legally speaking, no, the ICC will let the domestic processes proceed if they can in fact prosecute and they are willing and able to do so. I think in this case, the stark difference really is the willingness and ability of the government to go after the highest leader of the land. I think maganda din or relevant din na na-mention ng prosecution na even Secretary Remulla, now Ombudsman Remulla, mentioned na there's no willingness or ability to prosecute and go after the president himself. So while the case of Kian is there, I think the perspective and the argument still stands na when we look at the complementary jurisdiction of the ICC, it's still there because of the inability and absence of willingness to prosecute the highest leader of the country.
Balikan lang din natin yung mga nangyari kahapon kung saan nabanggit ang mga pangalan ng dalawang nakaupong senador, Senators Bongo and Senator Ronald Bato de la Rosa. Ano sa tingin ninyo ang magiging epekto nito? Number one, dun sa mga di umanong impending arrest warrants, dito sa dalawang senador nito, they were also there in the less redacted document, right? At nabanggit din muli, although hindi ako sigurado ngayon kung nabanggit talaga yung pangalan, pero nabanggit ni Prosecutor Jeremy na meron siyang mga itinalagang mga kasama niya sa Davao sa mga sensitibo at matataas na posisyon nung siya'y naging presidente para maipagpatuloy ang sistematikong pagpapatupad nung kung ano man ang pinatupad niya sa Davao City nung siya ay mayor. Ano sa tingin ninyo ang magiging epekto nito dito sa dalawang napangalanang senador kahapon? And of course, we're talking about Senators Bongo and Ronald de la Rosa, Attorney Garcia.
The cases, if any, that pertains to the Senator Bongo and Senator De La Rosa would be independently assessed, no? Kung mag-i-issue ng warrant of arrest, ang standard naman doon ay may reasonable grounds, no, that the crimes were committed by these co-perpetrators. So hiwalay ang pag-appraise ng evidence in the two other cases.
Can you please just hear me out?
No, all work management platforms are the same.
Monday.com is the one you'll actually love to use. It lets you set up your workflows yourself. No admin, no long approval process. You're in charge. If it's any type of work, marketing, sales, HR, llamas, and there's a free trial, so what's the harm?
You know what? I'm ready to fall in love again. Thanks, Talking Llama.
Monday.com, the first work platform you'll love to use.
Can you guys see her? Can anyone see Elsie?
Charges hearing, they did mention the critical role of then PNP Chief of Police Bato de la Rosa and the Assistant then to the President, Chief of Staff, si Senator Bongo, no, and kasama ito sa attribution of President Duterte na dinala niya mula sa Davao ang kanyang mga top-ranking official para ma-implement yung common plan, which is the supposed, the alleged state policy of a widespread attack against the civilian population.
At naging malinaw po sa inyo yon na mayroon silang naging gampanin sa pagpapakalat nitong sistematikong pamamalakad ng pagpatay ng mga kung sino man ang involved sa illegal drugs?
Insofar as the leadership in the PNP, definitely pwedeng meron talaga kasi the implementation of the memorandum on high value target and Plum Tokhang, that was through the then PNP chief, no, Bato de la Rosa. Siguro mas gusto pa ring marinig, no, from the prosecution kung ano yung argument nila, yung theory nila on the financial incentives, the provision of resources and aid and material for the implementation of the war on drugs. And I think kasi ikinakabit nila ito kay Senator Bongo, but so far mas nakatuon ang discussion sa attribution kay President Duterte, and we are yet to hear, no, and I think the proper forum is a separate proceeding really in relation to Senator Bato de la Rosa and Senator Bongo, if ever.
Para lang po sa kabatiran ng ating mga manonood, nasa kalagitnaan po tayo ng 40-minute break. Ito po ay kasama sa schedule ng ICC. Pagkatapos po ng break na ito, ay magpapatuloy ang prosecution sa kanilang submissions on the merits. Kumbaga, nauna muna si Prosecutor Jeremy, pagkatapos ang kanya namang kasamahan, ay magpapatuloy ng presentasyon. Pagkatapos noon, ang representatives naman ng mga biktima sa pangunguna ni Attorney Joel Batuyan at ni Attorney Gilbert Andres, sila naman ang mangunguna sa kanilang presentasyon. Judging from what happened yesterday, Attorney Garcia, dun sa paglalahad ng opening statement ni Joel Butuyan, ano ang expectations po ninyo, ano ang inaasahan ninyo na magaganap naman at sasabihin ng victims' representatives ngayong araw po?
Attorney Butuyan is representing the interests and the claims and the views of the victims, no? And yesterday, it was really an emphatic presentation of their call for justice, no? And a request for the court to confirm the charges as part of their pursuit for justice. I'm expecting that at this point, since we are on the merits, they would likely present some of the statements, probably from the witnesses, from the victims themselves, whether they're summary or maybe may mga citation of specific proof, no, na merong participation si Duterte, and also on the actual crimes themselves, the murders and the attempted murder. Ang coverage din kasi ng victims dito mula sa term ni then Mayor Duterte nung nasa Davao pa siya hanggang sa naging presidente na siya. So it would be interesting to hear ano yung mga nakalap na ebidensya ng victims. At more importantly, importante kasi yung redress mechanisms mula sa side ng mga victims, no? Ano yung mga naging losses nila? Ano yung mga whether in terms of livelihood, orphan families, mga implications in terms of the violations of the right to life, broken societies, things like that. Ito kasi yung magiging important na demand later on for reparations, no? Kapag nailatag nila kung ano yung mga naging epekto sa mga biktima at sa pamilya ng biktima ng war on drugs.
Okay, hold that thought, Attorney Garcia. Babalikan po namin kayo. Pumunta muna tayo sa Quezon City. Kasama natin ng live si Job Manahan na nagbabantay sa tinatawag na Justice Watch Gathering. Job, over to you.
Hi Carmina, magandang gabi. Andito pa rin tayo sa isang lugar doon sa Quezon City at patuloy pa rin ang pagtutok ng mga human rights advocates dito doon sa ikalawang araw ng pagdinig ng confirmation of charges ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Kanina nakita natin sila na nagulat pa rin, nalungkot at nakita natin yung mga violent reaction nila habang ipinapakita ng prosecution yung ilang mga ebidensya at news snippets noong drug war ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Kanina naabutan natin si Bayan Chairperson Teddy Casino na paalis na dito sa venue at briefly sinabi niya sa atin na traumatic pa rin sa kanya tuwing nakikita niya yung mga litrato at tuwing natatandaan niya yung mga nangyari noong drug war. Sa ngayon, yung mga estudyante rin nandito, nakikiisa at sinabi sa atin ng mga organizers na bukas itong venue na ito para sa ilan pang mga kababayan natin na gustong manood ng ikalawang araw ng pagdinig ng confirmation of charges hearing ni Duterte. Sinabi rin sa atin kanina ng human rights group na Karapatan na on the way na sila dito sa venue. So yan muna yung pinakahuling balita dito. Balik sa inyo, Carmina.
Maraming salamat ang ating kasamang si Job Manahan, nag-uulat ng live. At kasama pa rin natin si Attorney Lee Garcia ng UP College of Law. A while ago, Attorney Garcia, we were talking about how the prosecution, how the victims' representatives through Attorney Joel Butuyan yesterday laid out the families, the victims, di ba kahapon parang yun ang paglalarawan niya kung ano ba talaga ang nangyari. At kanina nabanggit nyo na tama ho ba na ngayon ang inaasahan nyo naman ay kung ano ang naging epekto sa realidad pagkatapos pinaslang ang kanilang kaanak? And what kind of an impact will this have para naman makumbinse ang pre-trial chamber 1 na magkaroon na nga ng full-blown trial? Go ahead po.
That's correct, Ms. Carmina. No? What we are expecting really is, at this stage, also for the counsel, the legal representative for the victims, to lay down the evidence, or at least a summary of the evidence that concrete and tangible proof that there was a substantial impact, no, to the victims, not just to the victims but also to their families and to their communities. Ang isang aspeto kasi ng ICC proceeding is also looking towards reparation, no? Justice for the victims also. At para mabigyan ng hustisya talaga, kailangang mailatag, no? Ano yung mga naging epekto sa mga biktima, sa kanilang pamilya at sa kanilang komunidad. So most likely ito yung maririnig natin sa presentation ng victims' legal representative.
I also wanted to get your thoughts on what Nicholas Kaufman said yesterday. Pambungad pa lamang, inatake niya si Pangulong Marcos. Pagkatapos inatake din niya yung media na tila bagang parang katang-isip lamang ng media kung ano man ang nangyari at kung ano man ang report, no? Pero ipinakita naman ngayon ng prosecution at pinakita din naman ni Nicholas Kaufman na sa kay Pangulong Duterte mismo nanggaling itong mga sinambit niya. Pero ang sinasabi nga nitong si Nick Kaufman kahapon, sa bawat pagsambit niya ng mga katagang ito, meron namang kaakibat na iba naman ang sinasabi ng Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Pero ano sa tingin ninyo ang strategiya sa likod ng pagbanggit sa Pangulong Marcos at sa naging gampanin ng media dun sa kasong kinakaharap ngayon ng dating Pangulo? Attorney Garcia.
This is a common observation also for high-profile cases, no, involving political leaders. The argument that it's a politically motivated persecution or prosecution. While looking at the presentation, I think ito yung magiging test talaga before the pre-trial chamber, no. Kailangang tingnan ng pre-trial chamber kung alin dito ang evidence that would establish the elements of the crime at alin naman ang mere politically motivated conversations. Actually, ang confirmation of charges hearing ay para ito sa accused, no? Para sa kay former President Duterte kasi it's a safeguard for the possibly denial of the confirmation of charges kapag makikita na wala talagang basihan, no, kung totoo man na politically motivated media sensationalism lamang. I can understand why it's being raised, no. But I think based on the presentation, there has to be a response also on all the other pieces of evidence being offered by the prosecution. In fact, nariyan din yung argumento ng prosecution na kahit nga tanggalin daw ang speeches ni former President Duterte, meron pa din silang sapat na basihan para mag-request for the confirmation of charges. So, the short answer to it is that it's a valid argument to raise that there are some possible political consequences, aspects to it. But this is really the judicial, legally speaking, ito talaga yung kailangang timbangin ng court. Alin dito ang valid evidence related to the crime at alin dito ang pwede nilang i-ignore na pieces of evidence na walang kaugnayan sa proving the presence of sufficient evidence.
Because if you're going to anchor your argument on that all of this is just politically motivated, how do you then explain the thousands of killings, the thousands of deaths?
That's a very valid point, no? Another important aspect kasi any action or any legal proceeding, meron talagang political consequence yan or merong impact, no, to the whole. It may benefit one party or the other. Pero ito yung maganda kasi sa confirmation of charges hearing, eh. You reduce the conversation on whether there's evidence to prove the presence of the elements. Meron bang nangyaring murder? Part ba ito ng widespread systematic attack? At may attribution ba kay President Duterte? So, you are correct to mention, no, na even if you allege or argue na may qualification of political leanings here, that will not be enough, no, definitely to respond to the different requirements, no, to support each of the charges raised by the prosecution.
Pero ano sa tingin ninyo ang ebidensya naman na pwedeng iharap ng defense, no, para mapatunayan na ito ay politically motivated lamang?
That's a little speculative nga actually, kapag if you look at it from that perspective. From the strategy and from the theory raised yesterday, mukhang may ipepresentang witness or recording ang defense na it's part of a plan to bring the former president to the ICC as supposedly part of the political decisions made by the present administration. So would like to hear, no, kung ano yung itong ebidensya na ito, kung ipepresenta man nila itong mga recording or any piece of evidence, no, na mag-uugnay to the present administration on the ICC proceedings happening right now. But as we've heard from the news, no, also yesterday, medyo firm din ang Office of the President that they didn't have any involvement and this is not politically motivated.
Kasi hindi ba, Attorney Garcia, ang pagdala ng kasong ito sa ICC ay nangyari bago pa man umupo sa pwesto si Pangulong Marcos?
That's correct, and that's a very important point to raise na wala pa sa, in fact at the time may alliance pa ang Duterte's and the Marcos administration, I think, when the case were being investigated, no. So definitely medyo mabigat ang burden sa defense, no, to run with that argument. They'll be pressed for really establishing na this is just a politically motivated case based on the exchanges happening now as we see in the news and also as stated in the confirmation of charges hearing.
Well, maraming salamat po sa inyo, Attorney Lee Edson Garcia. Siya po ay isang senior lecturer dyan po sa UP College of Law. Salamat po sa pagtulong sa amin, sa paghimay naman kung ano man ang mga nangyari nitong nakaraang ilang oras dyan sa continuation ng confirmation of charges hearing laban naman kay Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte dyan sa ICC sa The Hague, the Netherlands. Thanks so much, Attorney Lee Edson Garcia, there joining us tonight.
Thank you.
At sa loob lamang ng ilang minuto, magsisimula na po ang ikalawang sesyon ng Confirmation of Charges hearing ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte sa International Criminal Court. Huwag pong bibitiw, manatiling nakatutok sa aming special coverage.
Please be seated. Veuillez vous asseoir.
Maintenant, je vais...
I will now give the floor to the prosecutor. Please proceed please continue with your presentation.
Your Honours. My name is Robin Croft and I will address two topics today. First, I will present on the contextual elements of crimes against humanity. And second, I will set out some of the prosecution's evidence on Mr. Duterte's individual criminal responsibility for the crimes alleged in this case. Turning first then to the contextual elements. Your Honours, the contextual elements of crimes against humanity are established in this case because, first, there is an attack against the civilian population in the Philippines.
At muli tayong nagbabalik sa ating special coverage sa The Hague para sa pagpapatuloy ng confirmation of charges hearing ni dating Pangulong Rodrigo Duterte. Ito ang ikalawang bahagi ng sesyon ngayong araw. Inaasahan natin na sa bahaging ito, bibigyan na ng pagkakataon ang mga common legal representatives of victims para sa kanilang submissions on the merits. Dumako na ngayon tayo ng live sa International Criminal Court.
Your Honours, the contextual elements of crimes against humanity are established in this case because, first, there was an attack against the civilian population in the Philippines. Targeted civilians alleged to be involved in drug-related crimes and other forms of criminality. The Rome Statute crimes alleged in this case formed part of that attack. Our case is that from at least the 1st of November, the attack was widespread and systematic. To the 16th of March 2019, and the attack was carried out pursuant to or in furtherance of a state or organisational policy. Which targeted civilians. This policy was to neutralise. Your Honours have heard from my colleagues how from 2011 until 2016, the attack was alleged criminals in the Philippines through violent crimes, including murder. In 2016, the evidence establishing the contextual elements are set out in paragraphs 71 to 86 of our pre-confirmation brief. They used the national network to do this, which, as Mr. Jeremy has explained, was in relation to the requirement of an attack. Our case is that from at least the 1st of November 2011 to the 16th of March 2019, the Davao Death Squad, or DDS, and/or the National Network carried out an attack which targeted civilians alleged to be criminals. Your Honours have heard from my colleagues how from 2011 until 2016, the attack was concentrated in Davao City. Then, in 2016, when Mr. Duterte became president, he and his co-perpetrators expanded the attack nationwide. And the prosecution they used the national network to do this, which, as Mr. Jeremy has explained, was comprised of state actors, such as law enforcement personnel, as well as non-police assets and hitmen. Datasets and the statements of documentation actors. The evidence of insider Your Honours, the locations of the murders contained in counts 1 to 3 of our document containing the charges are indicated on the map on your screens. They include 76 murders, which themselves satisfy the threshold of multiple acts making up a course of conduct. However, as Mr. Nichols has noted, the crimes in count 1 to 3 are representative and emblematic of a larger killing campaign. And the prosecution relies on a range of evidence to establish that the attack was made up of thousands of killings and other violent crimes under Article 7.1. This evidence includes datasets and the statements of documentation actors, the evidence of insider witnesses, expert analysis, and the admissions of Philippine state agencies in their public reporting. I will take Your Honours through some of this evidence now. During Mr. Duterte's mayoral period, hundreds of civilians alleged to be criminals were killed in Davao City. On your screens is a chart with data on extrajudicial killings in Davao based on public reporting. The quarry was
The
only
data
one
is
of several
recorded at
places
tab
that the
116.
DDS dumped bodies in and around
It
Davao.
shows that between 2012
That's at tab
and
37.
2015, there are at least 274 extrajudicial killings in Davao City.
They described their job as the DDS.
This
with the
data
DDS
is
as
corroborated
being, quote,
by
just to
DDS
kill
insider witnesses.
small criminals, petty
Several
criminals.
DDS witnesses
Out of the
say that they
almost
each
300
killed
people that I
hundreds
have
of
killed,
alleged criminals
I never
while with the
actually got to kill a
DDS.
drug lord. End quote.
Your Honours can see on
That's
this
at tab
slide
34.
quotes from one DDS witness.
This witness's words make it clear
They estimate
that, the target
that,
of the
I
attack
quote,
was people
between
alleged to be criminals in
1,500
Davao.
and 2,000 people, end quote,
Your
are
Honours,
buried at
another
Laoud
DDS
Quarry.
witness who also killed
The
hundreds
quarry
of
was only
people
one of several
said
places that the
targeted,
DDS dumped
I quote,
bodies in and around
suspected
Davao.
criminals in Davao City.
That's at tab
including
37.
Shabu users and pushers. End quote.
This
That's at
witness
tab
said
58.
that they personally killed hundreds of people. They described their
as you have
job
heard
as the
previously,
DDS, with the DDS
Mr.
as
Duterte
being,
has himself
quote,
publicly
just to
admitted
kill
that he killed around
small criminals,
1,700
petty
people
criminals.
while he was mayor
Out of the
Davao
almost
City.
300 people that I have killed,
quote,
I never actually
They
got
say
to
I
kill a
killed
drug lord.
700.
End
They
quote.
undercounted.
That's at tab
Around
34.
1,700. End quote.
This witness's words
That's at
make it
tabs
clear
10,
that the
10.1,
target of the attack was people alleged to be criminals in Davao.
This evidence, the data
Your Honours,
collected by
another
independent
DDS witness who
organisations,
also killed hundreds of
statements
people
insiders
said that
on
the
hundreds
DDS
of people
targeted,
that they
I
have each
quote,
killed,
suspected
and Mr.
criminals in
Duterte's
Davao
own
City,
admission of
including
having killed
Shabu users and
1,700
pushers,
people
end
while
quote.
mayor of Davao,
That's at tab
all
58.
show that the attack was widespread in the mayoral period.
Your Honours, as you have heard previously,
And the attack continued
Mr
to be
Duterte
widespread
has himself
after Mr.
publicly
Duterte
admitted
became
that he
president,
killed around
when it
1,700
expanded
people
across the country.
while he was mayor of Davao
The
City.
victimisation
I quote,
expanded, with the
They say I
hundreds
killed
during the mayoral
700,
period,
they
becoming
undercounted,
thousands in the
around
presidential period.
1,700, end quote.
Your Honours can see
That's
a
at
map
tabs
of the
10,
Philippines
10.1,
on the slide.
10.2.
The colours which will emerge show the locations
This evidence,
and density of
the data
killings
collected
in the
by
anti-illegal
independent
drug campaign.
organisations, the statements of
dots indicate an
insiders
area
on the
with
hundreds
1
of
to 10
people
killings,
that they have
while
each
yellow
killed,
indicates
and
500
Mr
killings.
Duterte's own admission of having killed
This is how the killings
1,700
progressed
people
throughout the
while mayor of
presidential
Davao,
period.
all show that the attack was widespread in the mayoral period. And the attack continued to be widespread after Mr
Your Honours,
Duterte
this map
became
is
president,
based on data collected
when
by
it
an
expanded
independent
across the
organisation,
country.
which recorded at least
The victimisation expanded, with the hundreds killed during the mayoral period becoming thousands in the presidential period.
This data is recorded at
Your
tab
Honours can see a
104.
map of the Philippines on the slide.
The data shows that the attack during
The colours which will
presidential period
emerge
was
show the
widespread.
locations and density of the
As Your Honours
killings in
can
the
see from the
anti-illegal
map,
drug
It
campaign.
occurred across the country.
Purple dots indicate
It
an
occurred
area
over
with 1 to
multiple
10
years,
killings,
and
while
thousands of
yellow
civilians
indicates
were killed.
500 killings. This is how the killings
Mr.
progressed
Duterte's
throughout the presidential
administration
period.
effectively admitted to the large volume of the attack. They admitted that thousands of individuals were killed in anti-drug operations while Mr. Duterte
Your
was
Honours, this
president.
map is based on data collected by an
example,
independent organisation
Duterte
which recorded at
administration's
least
2017 year-end report, which you can see on your
5,823
screens,
anti-drug
the
killings
administration
during the
admitted
presidential
that
period.
3,967
This data is recorded at tab
drug
104.
personalities died in anti-drug operations.
The data shows
in the
that the
first year and a
attack during the
half of Mr.
presidential
Duterte's
period was
presidency.
widespread.
That's at tab
As Your Honours
106.
can see from the map, it occurred across the country.
Similarly,
It occurred over
the
multiple
Philippine
years,
Drug Enforcement
and
Agency,
thousands of
or
civilians
PDEA,
were killed.
admitted that 5,281
Mr
drug
Duterte's
personalities
administration
died in
effectively
anti-drug
admitted
operations
to the large
in the first
volume of the
2.5
attack.
years of Mr. Duterte's
They admitted that
presidency.
thousands of individuals were
This
killed
is
in
at tab
anti-drug
98.
operations while Mr Duterte was
These
president.
admissions corroborate the
For
widespread
example,
nature of the attack.
in the Duterte administration's
thousands of
2017
individuals
year-end
were killed.
report, which you can see on your screens, the administration
Your Honours, in
admitted
addition
that
to being widespread, the attack was also
3,967
systematic
drug
from its
personalities
origins
died
and
in
throughout the
anti-drug
past period.
operations in the first year and a half
Features
of Mr
DDS
Duterte's
operations
presidency.
demonstrate the
That's at tab
systematicity
106.
during the mayoral period. And these features can be found
Similarly,
in our brief,
the
paragraphs
Philippine Drug
35 to
Enforcement
36
Agency, or
and 88
PDEA,
to 98.
admitted that 5,281 drug personalities died in anti-drug operations in the first 2.5 years of Mr Duterte's presidency. The same hierarchical structure
This is
was
at
followed.
tab 98.
As Mr. Nichols explained,
These
the orders
admissions
flowed from
corroborate
Mr.
the
Duterte
widespread
at the top
nature of the attack.
through a combination
They
of
show
other
that thousands of
co-perpetrators,
individuals were
to
killed.
the handler of the relevant DDS team.
Your
And
Honours, in
finally,
addition
the
to being
physical
widespread,
perpetrators at the
the
bottom.
attack was also systematic
The
from its
DDS team,
origins
composed
and
of
throughout the
police
charge
and
period.
non-police assets and hitmen
The features of
who carried
DDS
out the
operations demonstrate this systematicity during the mayoral
killings. The features
period.
of the killings were all,
And these
also
features can be
often
found in our
markedly
brief at
similar.
paragraphs 35 to 36
The identity
and
or
88
whereabouts
to
of the
98.
victim was provided to the DDS by an
Insider
informant.
witnesses described how time and time
The
again
perpetrators
killing
would
operations
frequently
followed
arrive
the
to
system set
or
out
flee
on the
crime
screen.
scene by motorcycle.
The same
They
hierarchical
shot
structure
or
was
stabbed
followed.
their victims at close
As
range.
Mr Nichols explained, the orders
The
flowed
victims were
from Mr
targeted
Duterte
on
at the
basis
top
that they were alleged
through a
to be drug
combination of
users,
other co-perpetrators
pushers, or other criminals,
to the handler of the relevant DDS
and
team,
the DDS received
and finally
a
to
sum
the
of
physical
reward money for
perpetrators
each
at the
kill.
bottom. The DDS teams composed of police
When
and
the attack
non-police
expanded
assets
during
and
the
hitmen
presidential
who
period,
carried out the
it
killings.
continued to be systematic because it remained highly
The
organised,
features of the killings were
planned, and
also
coordinated.
often markedly similar.
Similar systems to the one I've just
The identity
described
or
in
whereabouts
Davao
of the
were
victim
deployed during
was
Mr.
provided to the
Duterte's
DDS
presidency
by an
to
informant.
implement the killings.
The perpetrators
Your
would
Honours can
frequently
see some of
arrive
those
to
features
or
listed
flee
on
the
your
crime
screens.
scene by motorcycle.
As in
They
Davao,
shot or stabbed their
were
victims at
targeted
close
on the
range.
basis that they were alleged to be drug users,
The victims were
pushers,
targeted on
or
the
other
basis that they
criminals.
were alleged to be drug users,
The
pushers,
process for
or
killing
other
the
criminals,
targets was often markedly similar.
and the DDS received
First,
a
the
sum
victims
of
were
reward money
identified
for each
by
kill.
state actors as targets and listed. As Mr. Jeremy
When the
has
attack
outlined,
expanded during the
high-value
presidential
targets
period,
were often
it
listed
continued
on
to
the
be
PRID list.
systematic because it remained highly
The targets of
organised,
barangay clearance
planned
operations
and
were
coordinated.
often listed on local drug lists,
Similar
such
systems
as
to the
local
one I've
police
just
station
described
lists.
in Davao were deployed during Mr Duterte's presidency
Second,
to
targets
implement
were
the
killed
killings.
in the context of so-called
Your
law
Honours can see
enforcement
some of those
operations.
features listed on your screens.
Police often tried to legitimise the operations.
As in Davao,
so they would stage
victims were
911 or
targeted on the
fight-back
basis
scenario
that they were alleged to
make
be
them
drug
appear
users,
to have been in
pushers,
self-defence.
or other criminals.
They would also plant
The process for killing the targets was often markedly similar. First, the victims were identified by state actors as targets and listed.
Were often paid reward money
As
per
Mr
kill.
Jeremy has outlined, high-value
Your
targets
Honours,
were
these
often
killings
listed
not
on the
random or
PRID list.
coincidental.
The
Quite
targets of
opposite.
barangay clearance
Targets were
operations were
pre-identified,
often listed on local drug
and then
lists,
subject
such as
to
local police
operations
station
based on
lists.
that list. This clearly demonstrates the systematicity
Second,
of the
targets
attack.
were killed in the context of so-called law enforcement
Your Honours,
operations.
the last point I would like to make about
Police
the
often
attack
tried to
relates to
legitimise the
evidence of an
operations,
expert
so they would
witness who
stage a nan
specialises
laban
in
or
political
fight-back
violence
scenario
in the
to make
Philippines.
them to appear to have been in self-defence.
This expert analysed data
They would
relating to
also
armed
plant evidence,
encounters
such
between
as
the
drugs
PNP
and guns on the
supposedly
victims'
armed
bodies.
suspects.
And
He
third,
compared
as in
data from
Davao,
before Mr.
police and those
Duterte's
working with